Okay, here we are with round two of this bullshit. So we're gonna be looking at a channel. Goes by Think Before You Sleep. This is a more popular, just a more popular MGTOW channel. I talked about this guy a little bit in my last video, and what I showed, what I showed of his video was bananas. So I figured we'd go just explore what he has to say. And I found this. I think this is a good video to talk about because I think it shows a lot of how, not just this guy, but I guess how most MGTOWs think. So let's just jump into it.
Even with this first clip of her, the whole premise of her video is that MGTOW are violent women haters. So that means she's non-violent, right? If that was true, then why is she pro-abortion?
Okay, so starting off strong. Instead of explaining what MGTOWs actually believe, he chooses to attack abortion. Something that's solely there to undo the effects of violence committed by, you guessed it, men. It's also there to prevent people from becoming parents when they're not exactly ready. Because believe it or not, accidents do happen. The more we talk about it, the more you'll see that this guy does not agree.
Abortion is a procedure where you take a vacuum and tear apart an unborn child limb from limb until it dies. Pro-choice or not, that's pretty violent.
So it seems his logic here is that organ donation is violent because it involves cutting open a dead body and harvesting their organs and then moving those organs to living patients. So he's kind of saying this could help someone in need, but it shouldn't be done because it's violent.
She's also perfectly okay with single motherhood. Look at the communities who have high rates of single motherhood. Their crime rates are through the roof. Single motherhood destroys communities and creates violent people. These kinds of contradictions are all over this video.
Damn. It's crazy how you say that, but 10 seconds ago you were talking about how violent abortion is. Wouldn't you be for abortion if you believe that single motherhood is such a harmful thing? And you say that as if it's purely the woman's fault if she's left as a single mother. Of course, MGTOWs neglect to mention that 66.5% of first-time fathers leave their partners. I think what you mean to say is, it's very irresponsible of men to think they can nut and just leave without having to contribute anything to the life they took part in creating.
A lot of my channel is dedicated to the ability to identify women who have untreated childhood trauma so that we can avoid these women in our personal lives. It's not our job to save them, it's their job to get treatment.
Wow. There's a lot I could say about that one statement, but I'm having a hard time picking which part of that is the most bizarre. I think it says a lot about a person who openly admits to avoiding problems rather than helping them. You don't even have to help. The least you can do as a human being is feel sympathetic. I have no idea how you plan to avoid these people when more than 60% of the population has experienced some form of trauma in their lives. That's right, I can look at Google numbers too. Is someone supposed to apologize for being beaten as a child? Should a woman be sorry for being the victim of sexual assault? If your answer is anything but no, I don't need a witty one-liner to tell you that you're the problem here.
People who are untreated victims of child abuse will ruin your life.
There's a lot that's wrong with being abused as a child, obviously. But what's so disgusting is the trauma that you experience is going to be with you for the rest of your life. I think that's why pedophiles have it so hard in prison, because they prey on victims for a quick fix that'll give them momentary sexual relief, but lifelong trauma on a child. And you can't shame people for not reaching out because the trauma they endured could easily have convinced them that finding help is meaningless. But things like PTSD and depression, those can be treated, but there's no cure for them. I'm not saying don't get help, but what I am saying is it's wrong to look down on people who suffer from these problems when they had no hand in creating those problems for themselves. Yeah, the trauma a child experienced could manifest into more toxic behaviors as an adult, right? But I think it'd be better to call out those people on their behaviors and at least attempt to right some wrongs rather than stating, if you suffered trauma as a child, I don't fuck with you.
And even if there are gender differences, there are still outliers, there are still people who fall at different parts of the spectrum. Not every woman is only controlled by her heart, and not every man is only controlled by logic. It's a big spectrum, all people are different. You can't make these big sweeping generalizations and use it as a bad thing. As human beings, we're all controlled by our emotions. We're all controlled by our emotions. You can't make these big sweeping generalizations.
So she makes a sweeping generalization about all people, then immediately after says that generalizations are wrong.
Alright, so in the video he's using, the girl says you can't generalize people, and then the MGTOW says, well look right there, you just made a generalization. I think it's fair to say people tend to be different from one another, but he desperately wants to feel like he's superior to this woman, so he'll body slam her for anything she says. He then further elaborates by explaining that if you think something's wrong with an engine, you wouldn't take apart the whole car, and meh.
So I'm not going to go over all of the bad arguments, because if I did, then this video would be over an hour long. But before that, let's hear a word from this video's sponsor, Sandman.
Zuck the cock drinks water like a duck.
Holy shit, MGTOW sponsoring other MGTOWs. It's like this never-ending human centipede, but the guys on the back are like, I'm not eating any of that shit if there's a single drop of soy in your diet. Fucking soy boy.
Get out my reincarnated link out for you fucking goddamn himself.
Like, how does it affect anyone else? How many people a woman sleeps with? Adults should be allowed to do what they want, as long as they take responsibility for their own actions afterwards. If a woman wants to go around sleeping with 1,000 chads, that's absolutely fine, as long as she practices safe sex, and if she does get pregnant, she acts responsibly about it, and, you know, she gets regular tests and uses condoms and whatever, and doesn't mess with anyone's feelings. I don't see why it's an issue.
Let's break down why it's a bad idea to have dozens or hundreds of different sexual partners.
I'll do what I want, when I want, and how I want.
Obviously, when she's saying 1,000 chads, she's being hyperbolic. But she's absolutely right. A woman's worth shouldn't be measured by the sexual partners she's had. What business is it of yours if a girl has had a longer history than you? Sex is this thing that can mean nothing, or it could mean anything. And what I mean by that is, just because she's done it with 10 guys doesn't mean she's failed at a relationship 10 times. It's possible that most of those were just meaningless one-night stands, which are way more common and socially accepted than MGTOWs seem to think. Just because you slept with a girl doesn't mean you have value to her. And just because a woman has slept with multiple men doesn't mean she's a whore. A lot of these guys see sex as this incredible treasure that mustn't be shared with two consenting adults lest they be wed. Come to think of it, a lot of these guys are conservatives, aren't they?
This is why you don't take advice from untreated abuse victims.
No. This is why you don't take advice from men who self-identify as red-pilled. You're a man, therefore you'll never fully understand the many difficulties that come with being a woman. That's why when it comes to laws involving women, guys just need to shut their fucking mouth. That's all it is.
And if you think that women don't lie about having STDs and practice safe sex perfectly, then you are out of your mind. This is all predicated on women being perfectly responsible. That is a fantasy. That is not how real people behave.
Oh my god, he said the thing. As if we needed further proof that MGTOWs think they're superior to women. Here we have a clear line, fully showing that this guy doesn't think women can be responsible. Thinking that women are the problem, and not all people. What a fucking joke.
Typically, if a woman gets pregnant, it means she has been having tons of unprotected sex. It also means that she has failed to be responsible in multiple ways. 1, for not using a condom. 2, for not using birth control. You know, birth control which is over 99% effective when used properly.
Yeah, birth control is great, but have you ever heard a girl talk about birth control? They fucking hate it, dude. Oh my god. The side effects include nausea, breast tenderness, headaches and migraines, weight gain, mood changes, and the list just goes on. How about instead of expecting a girl to take birth control, you play it safe and...
Be careful. Keep your jeans in your jeans. Keep your what? Jeans in your jeans.
Typically, if a woman gets pregnant, it means she has been having tons of unprotected sex.
Yes, another famous generalization by Mr. Incel 2.0. If you see a pregnant woman or pregnant teen, it's clearly because they're a slut that loves to have sex. Yes, that's obviously what it is. It couldn't possibly be the result of a mistake or, you know, that thing that men love to do. I think it rhymes with rectual revolt or somersault.
So why are there so many single mothers? It's because women aren't being responsible. Rachel is speaking in fantasy, not reality.
Or it's because guys have this hilarious habit of getting a girl pregnant and then swearing on their mother's life. Like, yes, babe, I love you. I'll take care of you and this baby, babe, I promise.
This is yours, babe.
Only to completely bail when plan B is ineffective, or like right before the baby pops out, or even right after. Guys can lie and dip at any given moment. And I know this big turd is saying, well, it's the mother's fault for failing to determine if she and her partner are fit to be parents. As if you've never been lied to. As if nobody's ever assured you that everything's gonna be okay, only to completely pull the rug out from under you. When you put down single mothers, maybe you should remember that it takes 2 to be parents, and 1 to make a bastard.
How many women do you know that can make sound decisions regarding finances? Few of them have the self-discipline to save money. Well, me for one, my sister for another.
You knowing an outlier does not mean that outlier describes the general trend. But is that true of the population at large? No. There are far more financially responsible men than women.
I feel like I could say this to every MGTOW's argument and it would be right 100% of the time. Weren't we talking about how wrong generalizations were earlier? He typed some words into Google and saw some numbers that coincided with his negative views on women and screamed from the top of his mom's house that women are financially unstable. His views have been justified. I guarantee you he looks at Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and he thinks, ah yes, those men are billionaires because they worked hard. They're in those positions because men are so good at achieving their dreams of being rich through legitimate means.
Take it from feminists. They are always saying that men have all the money. Why do you think the world works that way? Could it possibly have to do with competence, responsibility, or discipline? Nah, I guess they were all just lucky or they stole the money from women. Everyone who's rich doesn't deserve it, because if I believe that people were rich because of competence, then that would make me feel really bad about myself. By the way, guys, that's really what the wage gap argument is about. An inferiority complex.
You gotta remember, these boys believe that women aren't in high positions of power because they're incapable. It's their fault for not working hard enough, they think. They're like, hey, well maybe if you let Mr. Cosby do his thing, you could have gone from being a background character to a supporting role. They never stop to think, well, maybe a woman isn't higher up because a man is preventing her from climbing higher. It's not like all those industries are saturated with sexual assault and harassment.
But we don't even have to talk about that kind of stuff because I can prove that Rachel is not financially responsible, which kills her anecdotal example of women being responsible.
Well, wait a second, Mr. Ansel. What was that thing you said earlier? Just because Rachel's had a tough go of it in terms of finances doesn't invalidate her from speaking out against your sexist horseshit. He shows us this video of Rachel thanking her audience for supporting her financially and how without their help she wouldn't have been able to make rent the month prior. While the average person would stop and think, oh, that's so sweet. All it does is make a MGTOW feel superior. Ah, a woman struggling financially, they think. I told you that they can't take care of themselves. This goes back to MGTOW's lacking empathy. If this guy was in this situation, he'd probably complain about how hard it is being a man because men aren't supposed to ask for help or some stupid shit like that.
This video was filmed only 9 months after her video on MGTOW. 9 months after saying that she is financially responsible, she ends up broke and has to petition her followers to bail her out. Not saying that you can't ask your fans for help, but don't call yourself financially responsible and then cry about not being able to afford rent less than a year later.
Yeah, MGTOW, that's kind of how life works. I don't know a whole lot about the economy, but what I do know is that the cost of living, not the cost of rent and minimum wage and all that, but I mean living. It's fucking expensive, dude. God forbid you get hurt in an accident while living alone, because then that broken leg could cost you your job, your apartment, and any money you might have saved up. Now you may think that's completely anecdotal, but I guarantee you that this situation I've described is far more common than you'd expect. Skipping forward a bit, he shows us this clip of Rachel reading some stuff a MGTOW said on Tumblr and talks about how this is not the average MGTOW.
It's not hate we feel, it's contempt. Contempt is a very different emotion. Yeah, and it's so much better, isn't it? We look down on you, you disgust us, we don't respect you enough to even hate you. Hate should be reserved for people on your level, your peers, not for malfunctioning helpmates.
He goes on to say that anger is part of the healing process, but that this is not a healthy person speaking. Duh. Then he says this.
Contempt is what you have for someone when you want to enact violence on them. Contempt is how racial violence starts. Contempt is what the Columbine killers had before they shut up a school. Contempt is what Elliot Rodger had when he talked about how people were below him to justify his killings.
Well, shit. Now that you explain what contempt is, it kind of sounds like that really is what MGTOWs feel towards women. In the same video, you explain that women are incapable of being financially responsible, are incapable of knowing if they have an STD, and that a lot of your channel is about identifying women with childhood trauma so we can avoid them. Does it sound like someone who sees women as their equal? No. It sounds like they see women as beneath them. It seems like someone who disregards things that should be taken into account. It sounds like the very definition of contempt. So like you said, if contempt is what the Columbine shooters had, if that's what Elliot Rodger had before going on his little killing spree, then explain to me again how MGTOWs are harmless. Explain to me why they should just be left alone. Explain to me why we should just let them be. Hey kiddos, thanks so much for watching. I brought this channel up in my last video on MGTOWs, and I wanted to do another round of going through his channel. I probably might do another video on this same dude because this guy has loads of content we could look at together. I was actually having trouble deciding on if I should put stuff from this video in the original MGTOW video I did, purely because, like, again, a lot of what this dude says is ridiculous. but he says it like it's fact. You know what I mean? Like I said before, I watch a lot of these videos just to have something to laugh at, which I know it sounds really weird, right? Normal people watch 90 Day Fiance or like My 11,000 Pound Life, but I listen to MGTOWs. That's my trash TV. But if not for these guys, then what else would I talk about, right? Alright, but no matter what though, take care of each other, guys, and I will see you in the next one.